Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video. This time I thought it would be interesting to look at all of the interviews that took place at Gamescom, and indeed a summary translation that was posted onto the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit by Carrier of Light, which made things 10 times easier to sort of digest. A lot of these interviews obviously needed to be translated, and obviously the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit team has been hard at work actually getting this stuff translated for us, so there's very little point in me going to each individual news outlet and picking bits out myself, considering, it's summarized and already here to be read. So obviously I take no credit for this, and of course you can find a link to this in the top of the description of this video. So the various interviews at Gamescom took a while to actually sort of come out of there, but basically Famitsu, Dengeki, 4Gamer, GameWatch, and a couple of others actually took place in various interviews throughout that weekend with Yoshi P. So the first things that we're going to really address are some spoiler-related story questions. So if you're not interested in the MSQ or any potential spoilers, then you should probably not listen to this part. So let's first look at this. The first part isn't that interesting. Final Fantasy XIV hasn't had a pure evil character before, but Xenos was deliberately created to be like one in the eyes of the developers. Yoshida was actually asked if a Warrior of Light would return to the Source to get involved with Gaius and company, and he said that that's possible, but he can't say any more. So that to me says that we might be returning to the Source sooner than we think. Story-wise. 5.1 onwards, we'll head towards the end of the Jet Black villain storyline, which is Shadowbringers in English, but in Japanese it's obviously known as the Jet Black villain storyline, which is pretty cool. I think a lot cooler than ours. And the start of another story will be introduced in the later half of the 5.x series. Apparently Emmett Selk's lip movements were specially made, and basically all of the cutscenes in 5.0 are also like that. So if you wondered what was different about the cutscenes in 5.0, well, this is a good start. There's a heck of a lot more attention to detail on the actual characters' facial animations, and indeed the lip movements is certainly one that they paid attention to here, which is awesome. When Yoshida was asked if the story would turn out to be a galaxy scale one in the future, Yoshida said it's not likely, but he also said he isn't sure what the story will be like in 8.0. So I guess they've written all the way up until that point, which is, quite scary if you think about it. Back in the planning stages, they had ideas such as making the Thirst as a mirror of the Realm Reborn zones, and have the player be invisible because they are in a different dimension, which obviously they didn't go with in the end, and I think the game benefited more from this system personally than anything like that. Apparently they're going to write a proper conclusion for each of the core characters who are involved in the 5.0 MSQ, such as the Fat Makote and her husband, it says here. He also talked about possibly being able to expand on characters through the custom delivery system, so that'll be interesting to see as well. Apparently there is another layer to the question, what are the Ascians? And Yoshida said that the player's expectations will be met in a future storyline. Now we've previously seen mention of this before, but there's a lot to be told about the Ascians, and indeed Emmett Selk's backstory, so we'll probably be seeing more of that. Nothing from Hydaelyn's side of the story has yet been revealed, so they will eventually tell that story in detail as well. And Yoshida doesn't think that Hydaelyn and Zodiac's story will continue in the 5.x series alone, so this is probably going to be this massive blown out story, as you might have imagined, since it's the main attraction at the moment, and has been for so many years. So there's a little bit more to go before we get a conclusion to that major storyline. So then we move on to talk about 5.0 areas. There's apparently mentioned that Ilmeg is the Coerthus equivalent in the First, and since the First hasn't experienced any calamities, it has maintained a warm climate, and they base the area on medieval Europe and its fairy culture, which is pretty cool. Amarot was originally called Atlantis during development, and they aimed to make sure it didn't turn out to be too sci-fi. So that's interesting. So they were originally just going to call it Atlantis. So there we go. The Atlantean sort of mystery of Emmett Selk. That's, that has a certain ring to it. I'm glad they went with Amarot though, personally. There's little tidbits about Eden's storyline. Apparently the reason why they had Eden as the first boss is because they wanted to flip over the expectations of Eden has to be the last boss. That's pretty much the reason they give, so they just wanted to turn it round. They wanted to include Eden as part of the fight and lore, where he helps us instead of just being the enemy. And they also wanted to get away from everything being so predictable. And personally, I think they've managed that quite well. Shinryu's image is mixed in with Leviathan in the Eden raid, so that's where they got some of the other assets for that fight, if you didn't already know. Yoshida said, blame Thancred for saying the words fall off before conjuring Titan. He also said you have to consider how Reen is the one who controlled Eden to conjure Titan. In the end, she has never seen Titan before, so her image was mixed with the Warrior of Light's image. So they're just trying to find little ways of explaining why the fights are a bit different, but I don't think they need to explain it too much. It's just fun, isn't it, to see different versions of the fight. And yeah, I think a lot of people were disappointed we didn't get Titan's little quad bike as a mount. I know I was. And apparently Gaia, the second boss, designed by Tetsuya Nomura, will go on a rampage in the next raid. So in the second wing, we're going to be seeing Gaia for the first time, going and smashing things up. I cannot wait to see that. And obviously designed by Tetsuya Nomura, that's going to be something special indeed. So let's talk about the Eden Savage raids briefly. In comparison to the previous Savage raids, they reduced the DPS checks by 15% on every floor. They usually reduce the DPS checks for the first raid tier of each expansion by 10%, but they went with 15% this time. Apparently the reason why they went so far is because the skill rotations have changed drastically, and some roles have had even more changes as a whole. In return, they no longer create Savage content for the extremely hardcore top players. Yoshida said it's because there's an ultimate difficulty above it now. The developers expected E4S to last for another day, but it was finished faster than they expected. It's been a while since they made a whole fight instead of a fight split into the first and second half, but they used this E4S as a test case for a long whole fight. If they receive a lot of feedback where the players want them to go back to the first half, second half style, they'll consider that feedback to improve content in some way in the future. In regards to the future of Final Fantasy XIV, a little section here, the A Realm Reborn main storyline will be refined during the 5.x series. This is something that we've seen before, and this is obviously to sort of make it a little bit quicker, so you're through, to Heavensward as fast as possible. There's a lot of back and forth quests that they want to condense and remove bits from, so yeah, that'll be coming in the next few patches, I would imagine. They also have multiple new elements planned to spread and expand on the variety of the game experience in the 5.x series. Not really sure what that means, but they're talking about the spreading the variety and expanding the game experience. So different types of content, I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see what they mean from that. And the last section here of summary notes are miscellaneous. Apparently the CEO of Square Enix announced that they had 700,000 subscribers before Shadowbringers launched, but that wasn't the peak, and they have way more players currently. The amount of active players has surpassed 1 million, and the number of subscribers has also reached a never-before-seen level. They'd like to update us on the numbers at some point, but they might wait because the numbers are continuing to grow, and they haven't reached the peak yet. Before Shadowbringers, the amount of subscriptions would decrease after the first month, but they are still hanging on up to this point. It's not like nobody is leaving, but new players are flooding in to balance out the numbers. And apparently the audio issue needing to restart the game when switching audio devices was fixed by the Windows 10 update, and not actually by Square Enix. So that's an interesting one. We gave credit to Square Enix for that fix, but apparently it's just Windows 10, so I guess thank you Microsoft. In regards to the rest of this write-up here that Carrier of Light has posted, there's some interesting conversations which I would suggest that you go and read yourself. There's a lot of non-information, but a lot of interesting reasoning behind some of the decisions that happened during the actual progression, but at the same time the summary pretty much gets all of the nitty-gritty. So regardless, thank you kindly for watching this video. Obviously thank you to Carrier of Light and the Final Fantasy XIV unofficial subreddit Discord community, and indeed the 14 Reddit community's staff as well for actually piecing this together. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have 7 sources of news to condense into a summary. So obviously give them some love. Either way, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.